I have a very simple argument for the importance of the Old Testament, and it is this. This is my argument. If you look at this, this is the Old Testament and this is the New Testament. And people in the church today, they theoretically believe that the whole Bible is inspired by God and that it is the Word of God. And theoretically, they believe that practically they don't. In the church, most of us are heretics nowadays, because most of us mainly, predominantly, read and reflect on the New Testament. But this is it. I mean, a big chunk of it is the Old Testament. So if you don't read the Old Testament, it's like losing 80% of your vocabulary and grammar. Because if this is the language which we speak, then it's 80% of your grammar and vocabulary. Now, if you try to express yourself in English without using 80% of the words in this language, well, what you say will be very simple. I can guarantee that. And probably it's not only what you say, but what you are able to think will be very simple, simplistic. And this is why reading the Old Testament is important, because it is big, and it is the 80% of our vocabulary. The Old Testament, of course, it's a silly question, which one is more important, the New Testament or the Old Testament? And admittedly, the New Testament has some features which are hard to beat. I mean, it is a bit of the Bible which speaks about Jesus, or at least which speaks about Jesus directly. But the Old Testament has something for it. In a sense, it is richer than the New Testament simply because it is bigger and it addresses more aspects of human life than the New Testament. I've mentioned sex in one of my other answers, but I could mention politics. If you want to learn about politics, you will just find much more in the Old Testament than in the New Testament. So we would lose an awful lot if you don't study the Old Testament. And by study, I don't only mean academic study, but spiritual reflection on the Old Testament. And because of losing those things, we just become very simple and simplistic. One more thing, which I just remember, it's not only, I made a huge mistake in this answer. I was solely concentrating on the content of the Bible and of the Old Testament. And this is a typical mistake. We very often forget about the beauty. Beauty is important. I mean, poetry, the Psalms, but not only the Psalms. I mean, if you think about the vivid images in the prophets and the captivating stories in the historical books, it's full of poetry, and beauty does form people. Sometimes it's not that you learn something new about God, but you just enjoy things, what you read in your Bible, in the Old Testament, and through that enjoyment, invisibly, unrecognizably, perhaps, the Spirit of God is forming you. It is making you deeper. There is this anecdote about a student who went to her famous professor, asking her famous professor, okay, what shall I do to become a better biblical scholar? And allegedly the answer was that Well, she expected an answer like, you should learn Hebrew or Greek better, and no, that wasn't the answer. The answer was, you should become a deeper person. And then you become a better biblical scholar, because then you will ask deeper questions. And but it works the other way around, I think, too. This is true, but it's also true that if you study the Bible, the whole Bible, it makes you a deeper person. And if you not only study the content of the Bible, but you also enjoy the beauty. And the Old Testament has simply a different kind of beauty than the New Testament. And within the Old Testament, Psalms and Ecclesiastes have different kinds of beauty. So studying the fullness of God's revelation simply makes you a more rounded, deeper person.